Hi, welcome. I'm Nira Berry, motivational speaker, life and happiness coach, and your host of Happy and Healthy, where we explore and discover all the many ways of keeping you feeling happy and healthy. And remember to stay tuned to the end for my Good to Know segment, where I've always got something good to share with you. So during this time of the global pandemic, many of us are spending a lot more time indoors and we're sitting more, right? Many of my coaching clients have reported to me that they just seem to be injuring themselves, like doing simple things. So I thought it'd be a really good idea to bring in my next guest. She's going to help us with ideas and tips and techniques and how we can maybe prevent these injuries or help us heal them. So please welcome my guest, Dr. Ariela Pohl. She's a physical therapist and pelvic floor specialist at District Performance and Physio. So welcome, Ariela. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So I'll start off with so many things have changed during COVID. People are sitting around more. And as a physical therapist, what have you noticed?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of a bunch of things. I mean, it's a combination of, people are sitting more because just not having as many reasons to leave the house, and then also just working from home. I think so many people have told me they just don't realize how much less that they're moving just by not doing the simple things. So not even talking about exercising or walking outside, but just the normal day to day of leaving your house and going to work, walking around work, doing that, and then coming home. There's so much less movement just by staying in the house. So people are sitting around more, and then just kind of everyone's life being interrupted and losing that kind of schedule that they have with either going to the gym or doing the other things that they want to do. It's just causing a lot more sitting around. Yeah.
And as a result of that, what issues have you seen that have cropped up?
Yeah, so either people have, with sitting more, I mean, it causes so much more back pain, neck pain. And then also because if people are working from home, they don't necessarily have the ideal setup. I think a lot of people had kind of thought that no one knew how long this was going to last. So they thought maybe it would be more temporary. So I had one patient who he was like, yeah, he's trying to, him and his partner, just they're working in the same home, both working from home. So he has the table and the other has to, sit on the couch and kind of do that all day. And he's like, I noticed this isn't the proper setup, but months go by and still hasn't changed that. So I think people just didn't know, should they invest in something better to sit? Should they not? Just not really knowing what's going to happen. So that's a big thing. And if you're not walking around as much as you used to be, that's just going to create can create a lot more issues down the road. Or if you're starting to up your walking so much more because you're not able to go to the gym like you usually do, it's just this big change in everyone's routine. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. People do injure themselves. A lot of times people think that they're doing the right thing, and I've heard so many different. What's the right thing to do if you do or not? What misconceptions have you noticed that people have about injuries or exercise?
Yeah. So, I mean, really going off of what you're saying, so many people don't know if they're doing the right thing. You hear about proper form, and a lot of people get stuck on am I doing it right? Am I doing the proper form? When something that's super important is just for most people, there's not really such thing as the right thing for everybody. Everybody's built differently. So it's really about what is right for your body. If you're doing something that might feel the wrong way, but it feels good to you, that's okay. Just so many people come and by trying to squat in a certain way, they're actually hurting their hips more because their hips are built differently, and it's okay for them to turn out their feet a little bit more. Everyone tries to have perfect posture all the time, but then if you're tensing up like this all the time, your muscles are going to get tired. So I think just to kind of do what feels right for you and know that it's okay if it might be the wrong way, or there's not one way of doing anything.
Okay, because sometimes I know, for a stiff back, some people don't want to move it at all ever, and then some people say oh, you should stretch it a little bit. So I guess what you're saying is that do what makes it feel better.
Yes, definitely, definitely. But at the end of the day, like it is like it's all about like you want to move. Movement is good. Like there's of course times when maybe you want to like rest a bit, but at the end of the day, you want to move and you want to do things. And that's one thing I think what makes us kind of different here is like so many people have gone to their doctors and they tell them like, oh, just don't do this, don't do that, don't lift, don't twist your spine. But you know, we're dynamic individuals, we need to move around. And also, you know, by telling someone maybe that they can't lift or that they shouldn't run, we really try and keep people doing the things that they love to do without telling them to stop doing it. So, because so many people have been told, you shouldn't run anymore. And then, you know, 5 years later, you know, like over 65 years old, they can still run. So, you know, it's really about the person. And I think just movement and like just knowing that your limits are probably more than you think that they are.
Yeah, and also like I've heard like move it or lose it. Is that right?
Right, right, yeah. I mean, also, yeah, if you're not moving around and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, my back got so stiff, like, I mean, probably because you haven't been moving it.
Yeah,
Yeah, like motion is lotion. That's another popular thing
yeah,
too.
that's true. I have heard that. Yes, yeah, that's true. Absolutely, motion is lotion. I love that.
And strength takes time to build, but at the same time, you could lose strength kind of quickly. So, you know, it's good to always kind of try and do whatever your body can do, try and be active in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you give our audience, who are most of us who are home these days? Not everybody is, but most of us that are home these days. Can you give us some good tips for staying active to avoid injury in the future?
Right. So, you know, in terms of like what's I think it's important to think about like what is causing you not to be as active, right? Is it just time? You know, is it that you just don't have the resources that you're used to? You're used to going to a gym, you know, and you don't have that, or is it just not really knowing where to start, or just lack of motivation? You know, if I think if it's time, it's just good to find little bouts of when you can do. You know, if you have to take a work call, like why don't you go and take a walk during the work call, or like in between Zoom meetings or whatever you have, just taking like 5 minutes to just do a couple stretches or just get up and kind of like even march in place, move around. And if it's not knowing where to start or having accountability or like resources, I mean, this is just such an interesting time. There's so much out there, probably more than in the past with things virtually, Zoom, like, personal trainers so many of them are now probably going to stay virtual too. So just if you need someone to keep you accountable, do that. Or if you need something else to keep you accountable, like a lot of people are buying like Pelotons, and I've seen it really, really help people. Just like they invested in something like that, so they're going to stay active. The biggest thing I think is just taking action and making a plan. I say like nobody really has the time to work out, but you have to make the time to work out. So if you just kind of the beginning of your week, you say, okay, Monday, I have a little bit more time, so I'm going to block that into my schedule. It just makes things so much easier.
Yeah, I know it does, and I just know that that people are lose their motivation. So I know a lot of people that are investing in Pelotons and things like that. Is there but what if like somebody can't afford a Peloton? Is there something else that might help them? What do you think about the YouTubes and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, like they said, like there's just so much out there right now, and just a lot of free resources too. So like there are things, of course, like a Peloton. That's quite an investment. But there's just like YouTube classes or like Zoom classes. There's so many free ones out there, or just things that are really affordable as well. So like, and you can do stuff that's like on your own time if time is an issue. So that way you can plan, or like you could playing with that. But there's also a lot of things which definitely help keep you more accountable as well.
Yeah. So, we touched about, people working from home. So, what tips do you have for them to consider if they're setting up their workspace?
Right. So I get a lot of questions sometimes being like, do I need this like fancy chair or fancy this? You don't really need to have like a fancy chair. I think the most important things I would say though is that there's a back of the chair for a reason. So you do want to use the back of the chair to help support you. But if you sitting in the back of your chair causes you to kind of do this and your desk is over here, then bring the chair to you. Use like a throw pillow is a great thing to just put because it's like enough support but has a little bit of give. It's like if you sat like this without being unsupported and your muscles are just on for so much period of time, then it's like you holding your bicep like this for a long period of time. Eventually it's going to get tired. So I think having something to support, but to be able to keep you in a good position so that you can, use your computer, your laptop, kind of like usually like a 90-degree angle. And then the biggest thing is just, like versus like a sitting or standing desk, the most important thing is just to, not be in one position for too long. Studies have shown that like focusing on proper posture, the perfect posture isn't as effective as just being able to, not being in one position for too long. So I think a stand desk is great because you can just you don't have to stand all the time, but you also don't have to sit. So I think just having that combination is great.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you some other questions about that, but we're going to take a short break. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. And thank you. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. I'm Nira Berry, your host of Happy and Healthy, and we're continuing to speak with Dr. Ariela Pohl, and we're going to learn more about what we can do as far as physical therapy and exercises. So, Ariela, I was interested that you were talking about workspaces and how we can, set those up so that, especially since we're working from home now, what's the best way for us not to get injured. But what can we do that when we're there to prevent injury?
In terms of like if you're like standing for a while or
Yeah.
so.
What about like the treadmills, for instance? A lot of people are using treadmills while they're, standing desk or something.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just variability. Like if you're doing anything if you're on the treadmill for like 3 hours, it might be a lot. Or same thing if you're standing for a long time, your legs might get tired. Sometimes you do want to sit. Especially if you're going to find yourself getting really tired and just kind of ending up like, kind of falling over like that. It's just good to mix it up. So I think just like don't want to do one thing for too long, just changing up the positions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it all. How long have you been practicing?
I've been practicing for 5 years now. I've treated thousands of people in different types of settings as well. But the majority of my time has been in outpatient orthopedics and pelvic floor as well. So definitely see a huge variety, very big variety of people as well.
And were you ever injured yourself, or is that how? What was your inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely like how quite a few people get into physical therapy is they've experienced it themselves and seen how much it's helped them. I have been injured and I have had PT, but this is actually after I already knew I wanted to be a PT, which was in high school. Which, my mom's a physical therapist, so I knew what it was, but I actually took a sports medicine class in high school, and I just loved like treating injuries and just learning about movement. And it's a perfect combination of kind of science, working with people and helping people and physical activity. So.
Yeah, it's really great because people I've noticed that a lot of times when people are very stressed, especially these days, that they do tend to injure themselves, and so it's great that people can come to you, and that you can help them. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was that let's say we're at home now, maybe, and we're in a seated position. Maybe you can give us some tips on what we can do, like maybe some seated exercises that can help us.
Yeah. So a couple exercises that I really like, one, for like kind of the mid back, easy enough to do in your chair, is you kind of put your hands on your knees, and a lot of people have heard of cat cow or cat camel, so it's the same kind of thing.
Oh, like the yoga exercises, yes.
When you're doing it in a seated position, you're just using your mid back a little bit more, as opposed to like a little bit less of the low back, like you do in that normal kind of yoga position. So just kind of going forward or arch up, and it's good to kind of keep breathing through it. To kind of breathe in as you do that, and then breathe out. So that's a great one. Even just like if you're taking a second, you can even kind of like still look like you're in a Zoom meeting and put your leg on your chair and then just kind of come forward like that. Because your hip flexors can kind of get tight when you're in that sitting position for a while. So if you're able to just kind of stretch out those hip flexors, easy little things that you can do while sitting at your desk.
Yeah, those are really great because when I'm sitting in the Zoom meetings, I don't think about like even stretching out at all. I'm just sitting there and you're just concentrating. But yeah, that would really help. Like maybe you could put like little notes to remind ourselves to.
I even say set a timer, because like you said, like before you know it, 3 hours have gone by and you're like, I haven't moved from my chair. I don't know how that happened. So kind of set a timer like every half hour, get up 1 minute and then you can come back down.
Yeah. And I know that you had also mentioned when we spoke before about diaphragmatic breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And, would you like to demonstrate that?
Yeah. So diaphragmatic breathing is a great way for like relaxation. Really helpful for neck pain, back pain, pelvic pain. And just kind of, I almost kind of think of it sometimes as like a reset. So with the diaphragm kind of sits right around that rib cage. So when you breathe in, you want that diaphragm to expand. So I say kind of put one hand on your chest, one hand kind of right below the ribs. And when you breathe in, you don't want to let that top hand rise and fall. So I see a lot of people breathe like this. So you want to try and let the bottom hand rise and fall instead of the top hand. So the bottom hand goes like that. So actually from this view, you can kind of see like that. And kind of just taking time to like focus on your breath, like you do with like yoga and meditation. And same thing with other kinds of exercises and just day to day. Great thing to do to kind of give a reset.
Yeah, I know we don't think about doing that. Or we don't even think about our breathing because it's just obviously a natural thing that we do. But it is important to breathe the right way, because if we're just taking a deep breath and just going like that, like bringing our chest up, that means that the air is not going down all the way, expanding out into our lungs.
Mm-hmm.
So that full breath, which would help us, think clearer, right? And also, it'll help us be able to move easier and not be so tight. So I wanted to ask you. I know that you have your specialty in pelvic floor, and can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe potential ways anybody can avoid any injury to that, and who that might affect the most?
Yeah, so pelvic floor therapy. So pelvic floor are the muscles that kind of lie within the pelvis, and so they have a lot of different functions. They aid in urinary function, defecation, sexual function, and even like just supporting the visceral organs, supporting your baby when you're pregnant. So they affect a lot of people, both men and women, which I treat. And why it's a little bit more of a specialty is just, because of all the different systems they affect, but they are muscles, just like muscles in the rest of the body. So a lot of times, I think the biggest thing is just people don't know that they can get help for certain things like incontinence, whether, during pregnancy or afterwards, or, during aging or menopause, just pelvic pain, pain with intercourse, constipation. I mean, these are all such common things. And that people don't really like to talk about or feel like they can talk about, but it's so common. And there's exercises, stretches, and just kind of education that can help rather than having to either just learn to live with it or take medication or surgery. So I think just knowing that it's an option and that also it's okay if you have, like, there's nothing wrong with you if you have these things. Sometimes just knowing, like, I think like 80% of people feel better just knowing what's going on with them and that there's a way for them to get help is
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Like, 'cause even like something like a knee injury, I know, like, sometimes, like, if people have been walking more than usual these days or trying to run, that sometimes they have a knee injury and they just automatically assume, like, oh my God, I'm going to have a knee replacement injury.
yeah,
And sometimes it's as simple as doing some stretches, right? Yeah.
definitely. I always want to emphasize, like, you know, like, I want to keep you moving and keep you going as much as you possibly can. Like, there's probably more that you can do than you think you can.
Yeah. So let's say for a knee injury, which is so common, is I know, like, the as far as stretching, like, what would you recommend for that? What would be like the first thing?
I mean, it depends on really what it is, right? Like, there's so many different kinds of pain, right? I think the same thing. Find a way to move it that is tolerable and isn't too painful. Like, people sometimes are like, oh, like, no pain, no gain, which isn't necessarily the truth, but just trying to find a way to move it as much as possible. And a lot of times people think that it's also everything's just too tight. But sometimes just muscles are too weak and they just need to get a little bit stronger. And not always remembering that. So pain has a message for us, but pain does not always mean damage. So it doesn't always mean that you need to have surgery or something like that.
Right. That, they can come to a physical therapist or and do some stretching and build up the muscles around it. There's so many things that people can do. Right. I know people, I think, tend to think the worst right away. So let me just ask you, if somebody wanted to find out more information and to reach you, could you give us your website?
Yeah, so our website is districtperformancephysio.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram as well, because we like to give a lot of these same kinds of messages and talk about these same kinds of topics and just different things that you can do
Okay,
to feel
great.
better. Yeah.
Okay, great. And let me just ask you one last thing. What is your favorite exercise if you had one thing to do?
I would probably just say squats. I just love squats. I think that yeah, I know. So a lot of people are probably thinking I'm crazy, but there's just such a variety of things that you can do with them. So many different ways to do it, and it's just a functional exercise. We need to kind of squat day to day. So if I had to choose one exercise to do the rest of my life, I literally just told this to a patient the other day, I would do squats.
Wow, that's good to know. I'm going to revisit my squats. I'm going to rethink about that. So, thank you so much, Ariel. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful. All your information is really helpful. So, I really appreciate you being my guest today. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks again for having me.
Sure, thank you. And we're going to continue with we're going to take a short break. And so, come on back for my next segment of Good to Know. So, we'll be right back.
3 months ago, there weren't enough masks. We were desperately sourcing from all over the world. People were making face coverings from scarves, bandanas, and bits of fabric. Now there are plenty of masks, but some people don't want to wear them. Come on. Mask up, America.
Hi, I'm Nira Berry, life coach and happiness coach and motivational speaker. And now it's time for Good to Know. And as part of my series on success in work and life, I'm going to share with you my ideas and information about happiness that can positively impact your overall health, happiness, and success today. Recently, scientists from University of Michigan reviewed many studies over the past few years about the connection between physical activity and happiness. And they published a journal article about the evidence showing that there's a real consistent relationship between physical activity and happiness. And I think most of us may realize this inherently, but it's always a really good idea to know this, especially to get us more motivated. And apparently, it doesn't take much. The study showed that as little as an additional 10 minutes a day of increased physical activity, or even one additional day per week of exercise, might result in increased levels of happiness. And they suggested that both aerobic exercise and stretching and balancing exercise were effective in improving happiness. So you can imagine how much greater benefit we would get from adding even more exercise, of course, within reason. And when we start, we just have to start slowly, right? Like we can't just like go out there and start running if we haven't done it at all, just a little bit at a time. And if you need a doctor's permission, please get that first. But many of my coaching clients have told me that at the beginning of the pandemic, they were gung-ho about keeping up with their exercise routine if they had one. But as the year went by, it seemed to get tougher and tougher to continue. And many have slacked off, some just a bit, and some completely. Also, they notice that their moods have taken a downward turn. And this has been a really common experience. We have all done what we needed to do to get by. Like you can treat yourself to goodies every once in a while. I know I've done that. And you have to also be good at forgiving yourself for doing this. We can give ourselves a pass. It's okay if we're slacked off of our healthier routines, right? So if you want to feel cheerier, there are many things you can do. You can go out there and get some sunshine, and you can even go and chat with friends, outside or in their homes, or you can even practice laughter. But according to this study, there's evidence showing that if you exercise a little bit more, it might just do the trick and make you a lot happier. So let me know your thoughts. You can contact me. I'm Nira Berry, the happiness coach. You can reach me at info@niraberry.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And thanks for watching Happy and Healthy. I hope you have a happy day.
America, land of the free. It's at the core of who we are. Freedom. The freedom to live without fear, to drive through all 50 states, to sleep safely in our own beds, the freedom to jog where we please, to watch birds in the park, to wear a hoodie, the freedom to breathe. Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because no matter your religion, gender, disability, age, race, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.